All right, guys, so now that Week 14 is officially over, the Arizona Cardinals do play tonight, but that doesn't have too much of a big of effect on whether or not the Packers can or can't make the playoffs. It is time for a part 2 of breaking down every way and what has to happen for the Packers in order to make the playoffs. If you guys saw my last video last week, I went and did the same thing. I went through all the possible combinations, the percentages, and all of that on whether or not the Packers can still make the playoffs, which they can, and what the odds are in each situation. Now, again, let me start this off by saying this is still a long shot, and me personally, I still don't see it happening, but first and foremost, the Green Bay Packers have to win out. They have to win the remaining 4 games, and they haven't looked like a team all year that's going to be able to do that. Can something change after this bye week they just had? Who knows after that nice win against Chicago? I mean, the Chicago Bears aren't good either, so for them to go out there and kind of put together a tough win against a Bears team that's really not that good doesn't really prove much to me. But hey, mathematically, they are still in it, so let's break it all down. All right, so first, let's look at the current NFC playoff picture. So I'll bring it up on the screen here, and we see Philadelphia is still the first seed. Nothing's changed here. They're 12-1. They just ran through the Giants pretty easily. The Giants moved down to the 7th seed from the 6th seed, and Washington came in to the playoff picture, replacing the Seahawks since Seattle lost, which we'll talk about here in a second. Dallas is the 5th seed at 10-3. Minnesota is still the 2nd seed, also at 10-3. San Francisco with an impressive win over the Buccaneers, 9-4. They're the 3rd seed, and Tampa Bay is still in the playoff picture because the NFC South is just that much of a dumpster fire at 6-7. Like I said before, only Tom Brady's football team can be 6-7, get smoked by Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy, and still be a 4th seed in the playoffs at 6-7. And then if we look at the records of the current teams in the NFC, obviously the Packers are still 5-8. Detroit beating Minnesota, which really wasn't in the Packers' favor. We'll get more into that in a little bit, but it didn't hurt them too much because they're going to have to win out anyways. Now, Detroit does have the current tiebreaker over the Packers, but one of the remaining games is against Detroit. So if Green Bay wins out, obviously they'll beat Detroit. Then it'll come down to different tiebreakers, but likely Detroit would lose one more game and then also lose against the Packers in Week 18 there. But Detroit's 6-7, Carolina's 5-8, Atlanta's 5-8, Seattle is 7-6, Arizona's 4-8, Washington's 7-5-1, the Giants are 7-5-1. There is a ton of teams right in this little middle area. All right, so now let's go into all the different combinations. As we saw last week on this simulation, the Packers had a 3% chance to make the playoffs. With all that happened this week, which a lot went in the Packers' favor, things that I didn't expect to happen but did, they're all the way up to a whopping 6% chance. First and foremost, if you see Week 14 here, the Eagles beat the Giants. That was one of the games that would help the Packers. The Giants losing helps the Packers, and the Eagles made easy work of the New York Giants. And the Giants are really starting to fall. I mean, they started this year hot. In order to the Packers to make the playoffs, they kind of need to take a late year drop, and that's kind of looking like what may happen. The second most important game, which I did not expect, was the Carolina Panthers beat the Seattle Seahawks. Now, if you saw my recent video when I was talking about this, I was like, I don't see this happening, but who knows? Maybe Sam Darnold comes out and has a good game. And surprisingly, that's what happened. I did not expect this to happen, but hey, it helps the Packers, and that's why they're currently at a whopping 6%. And as I was saying earlier, with the Cardinals game later tonight, it doesn't have that much of effect because, as you see, if the Cardinals win, it's still a 6%, and if the Patriots win, it's still a 6%. All right, so first, let's go in and see the percentage if the Packers were to win out. Had no help from anyone else, what that chance would be for them to make the playoffs. Obviously, this can't happen because they don't play all the 4 games before anyone else plays, but just to play around, let's see. We'll click on a win against the Rams, which would move them up to 8%. So if they win next Monday, but we'll know all the previous games from next week before then. Then if they beat the Dolphins in Miami, then it goes up to, it starts getting up there, goes up to a 19%. Then they beat the Vikings in Green Bay in Week 17. We're up to a 35%. And then they finish out the year in Lambeau against the Lions. Say they beat them. Then we're at 55%. So as of right now, if the Green Bay Packers all of a sudden won 4 games and they finished out their season, they would have a 55% chance, more than a coin flip. So that's really not that bad, because then that basically means only a handful of things need to go in the Packers' favor for them to have a decent chance to make the playoffs. And of course, this is on the basis that they win out. And like I said earlier, that's going to be a very tough task on its own. All right, so now let's move into Week 15 and the matchups we want to look out for and what teams we want to win. So the same as last week, we want the Seattle Seahawks to lose. And they're playing a very hot 49ers team. Brock Purdy came out there and impressed me. I mean, being Mr. Relevant in the previous draft and then all of a sudden starting at quarterback for the 49ers now, that team is ran really well where they could really use any quarterback because they're such a good running team. They have a good defense. We've seen that firsthand as Packers fans, but credit due to Brock Purdy. Nice game out there against the Buccaneers. So we want them to beat the Seattle Seahawks, stay on their hot streak, and beat the Seahawks after they just lost to the Carolina Panthers. I do see this happening. So if that does happen, the 49ers go and beat the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle, we're still at a 6%. But nonetheless, you want the Seahawks to lose. And then if we look at another game this upcoming week, we have the Lions against the Jets. Now, it's not going to do much, but you still want the Lions to drop another game before the Packers play Week 18, just to shore things up. Now, that technically could not happen. The Lions could win the next 3, and then the Packers could play them in Week 18. Then there'd be other tiebreakers because they both, have a win against each other and the same record. But just for the sake, we want the Jets to beat the Lions here, which I think can happen too, and that would put the Packers up to a 9% chance before they even play on Monday. So on Sunday, if the 49ers beat the Seahawks and the Jets beat the Lions, then we go into Monday night. The Packers face the Rams, who now are ran by Baker Mayfield, which things just got a lot more interesting because, and you saw in my last video, I was pretty much saying, hey, if any game the Packers should win, it should be this one, but that might not be the case anymore if Baker Mayfield has a weird late season career resurgence, which he had a good game on Thursday night. So who knows? But if the Packers were to win this game against the Rams on Monday Night Football, and those 2 games went their way, then they're at a 13% chance to make the playoffs going into Week 16. Now for Week 16, there are 3 games that you want to keep an eye out for. We have the Chiefs playing the Seahawks. So again, you want the Seahawks to lose here. So if Chiefs beat the Seahawks, which I see definitely happening, percentage goes up to a 12%. Then we have the Giants playing the Vikings. Weirdly enough, we're a Vikings fan that game. I don't know what happened last week when the Vikings lost the Lions. I don't know if they're trying to potentially keep the Packers out of the playoffs. Likely not. That's just a conspiracy theory. But the Vikings beating the Giants, I also see this happening. If that happens, then we're up to a 16%. Then we have the Commanders playing the 49ers. You want the 49ers to win. So weirdly enough, we're kind of rooting for the Vikings and 49ers for the rest of the year, and that just feels so disgusting. So if the 49ers beat the Commanders, they're up to a 17%. Now that game's at 4 o'clock Eastern. The other 2 are at 1 o'clock. So obviously the Packers will know if they beat the Dolphins beforehand. But say the Packers do beat the Dolphins, which is going to be an extremely tough game, then they're all the way up to a 31%. And that's if everything goes their way the previous week and this week as well. Moving on to Week 17. Again, this is just weird sacrilegious stuff happening for us Packers fans. We want the Bears to win against the Lions. It doesn't matter too much because it keeps them at 33%, but nonetheless, like I said, you kind of want to root against the Lions. But if they already have a loss before this, like they did in this simulation, it really doesn't matter too much, so I guess you just don't really have to care about the game in this circumstance. Then we have the Giants playing the Colts. Again, you want the Giants to lose, and the Colts may end up giving the Giants a loss. If they keep sliding like they are, I could see that happening. That would put the Packers up to a 43% chance. Then we have the Commanders playing the Browns. Obviously, again, you want the Commanders to lose, and you want the Browns to win here. That would put the Packers up to a 44% chance. Then we have the Packers playing the Vikings. This is at 425, so we'll know the results of all the other games before this. Although I do see the Miami game a tougher game because it's out of conference, you don't see them as much. Interdivisional games can be tough, and although the Vikings easily had the Packers number Week 1, and they're not really anything different than they were in Week 1, I do see this being a closer game, and I could see the Packers potentially winning this. They tend to split the Vikings every year, and I know every year is usually different for the Green Bay Packers, but nonetheless, let's say the Green Bay Packers, go into this game, beat the Minnesota Vikings, and everything else has gone their way. Now, before even Week 18, they're at a 65% chance. All right, so now for Week 18, similar to last video, if everything goes their way, which a lot of people are saying, oh, that'll never happen, but it kind of just happened in Week 14. I know it was just 2 games, but you didn't expect the Panthers to go out there and beat the Seahawks, so that's what I was kind of saying. Any given Sunday, things can happen. I've seen more crazy things happen in the NFL. So if we go into Week 18, it's very similar. Go and beat the Lions. That's all the Packers have to do, and they're at above a 99% chance to make the playoffs. They'll likely make the playoffs in this scenario. It doesn't matter about the rest of the games. It won't really hurt them or help them if any other team wins or loses. So if everything happens up until Week 18 like it did in this simulation, go out, beat the Lions, make the playoffs. And as we see here, it put the Packers at 9-8 and the 6th seed in the NFC. The last time the Packers were the 6th seed, pretty good results. But yeah, that's all that has to happen in order for the Packers to make the playoffs. Again, like I said in the beginning of the video, do I see this happening? Probably not. But hey, we can all sit here and hope.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah!
But let's take it 1 week at a time. The Packers still got to go out there and win a football game on their own. At this point, yeah, sure, it matters what happens in other games in order for them to make the playoffs, but the number one priority is going out there and winning games. Also, guys, wanted to remind you, I am still giving away this signed Christian Watson Packers throwback jersey. Thank you to Pristine Auction. If you're interested in this jersey, it's completely free to enter. You go to pristineauction.com, register on their website using my code BASS. That's BAS on pristineauction.com to be entered in this giveaway that ends at the end of December. But that about does it for this video. Thank you, everyone, for watching. As long as the Packers are alive in the playoffs, I will continue to make more parts to this series. So if you are new here and are interested in that sort of thing, go down, hit that subscribe button. It supports my channel a ton. Leave a like on the video and turn on post notifications to not miss it. But I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching, and as always, go Packers.